Have you ever felt like someone you love is slipping away, right in front of your eyes? Like a slow-motion car crash you can't stop, no matter how hard you try, knowing it's headed for impact. Did you ever wonder if it was something you did, or maybe something you didn't do? The kind of what-ifs that echo in an empty house, keeping you up at 3 a.m., staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment. And the biggest question of all, how do you go from sharing everything with someone, from being inseparable, from building a life brick by brick, to suddenly being strangers? Just two people sharing the same air, but living in different worlds. It's the story of me and Imojen, and how we became just me on New Year's Eve, 2024. Let's start at the beginning, shall we? When did Imojen start to grow cold? It wasn't a sudden change, not like flipping a switch. It was more like the slow fade of a summer sunset. I'd say the first real signs, the ones I couldn't ignore, began around late 2021, early 2022. We'd been married for 5 years by then, together for nearly 10. Before that, we were that couple. You know, the one always laughing, finishing each other's sentences. The kind that made your single friends roll their eyes. But then, the laughter started to dwindle. The easy silences we once shared became just silent, strained, awkward even at times. She'd spend more time on her phone, even when we were together. Not scrolling aimlessly, but focused, almost intense. I'd ask what she was doing, and it was always just work stuff or reading an article. Little things, right? Things you brush off at first. But they accumulate, like tiny pebbles in your shoe. Eventually, they start to really irritate. Our evening routine, which used to be about unwinding together, morphed into parallel lives. Me on the couch, her in the spare room, working. I remember one specific night, I tried to hug her while she was on her laptop. She flinched, just a little, and said, "Bert, I'm busy." That was a first. It stung. So, why couldn't we talk about it? That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Because I did try. Oh, believe me, I tried. Initially, I approached it gently. "Hey, everything okay? You seem a bit distant lately." Her answer was always the same. "I'm fine, just stressed with work." I bought into it for a while. She had taken on a new, demanding role. So I tried to be understanding, give her space, ease her burdens around the house. But the distance didn't shrink. It grew, and my attempts to connect, to even just have a simple conversation, felt like pulling teeth. I'd ask about her day, and get one-word answers. I'd try to share something funny, and she'd offer a weak, distracted smile. It was like talking to a ghost. Eventually, my gentle approaches turned to more direct questions. "Imojen, are you unhappy? Is something wrong with us?" And that's when the defensiveness started. "Why are you always so negative, Bert? I told you I'm fine. Can't you just trust me?" It became a cycle. I'd push for a conversation, she'd retreat and get irritated, and I'd end up feeling frustrated and even more alone. The arguments, when they did happen, were never productive. We'd just go in circles. She'd accuse me of being needy, I'd accuse her of being closed off. The physical intimacy, too, started to wane. And for me, that was one of the hardest parts, because that's where so much of our connection used to lie. Our usual affectionate gestures, holding hands, a quick kiss, a hug, became rare. I'd reach for her hand, and she'd subtly pull away, or just not respond, going to bed, which used to be our time for quiet talks and closeness, became separate affairs. She'd stay up later, or I'd fall asleep before she came to bed. And sex, that became almost non-existent. There were always excuses. "I'm tired, I have a headache, I'm just not in the mood." At first, I believed her, but when it became every night, every week, every month, you start to internalize it. You start to think, is it me? Am I not attractive anymore? That feeling of rejection, constantly, it's so crushing. It chips away at your confidence, at your sense of worth, especially when it comes from the person who's supposed to love you most. I remember trying to initiate intimacy one night, gently, tentatively. She just sighed and rolled over. That was a breaking point for me. I just stopped trying. It wasn't just physical. The emotional intimacy vanished too. We stopped sharing our dreams, our fears, our daily triumphs and struggles. We became roommates. The dreaded question, was there someone else? As much as I hated to admit it, it crossed my mind, constantly, especially with how secretive she became with her phone. She'd take calls in another room, always with a hushed tone. Texts would come in, and she'd quickly turn her screen away if I glanced over. I'm not proud of this, but I did try to snoop. I looked at her phone once while she was in the shower. Found nothing concrete, but the sheer volume of deleted messages was suspicious. Then there were the work trips that seemed to stretch longer than necessary, and the increasingly vague explanations for her whereabouts. My gut was screaming at me. Every instinct I had was telling me something was off. But the thought of confronting her was such an accusation. It terrified me. I was afraid of the answer, afraid of shattering the last illusion of our marriage, even if it was already crumbling, so I just let it fester. Looking back, I regret not being more direct, but at the time, I was so consumed by fear and desperation to salvage what we had. I was blind. The ambiguity, the uncertainty, it's almost worse than knowing. It eats away at you, slowly. You create all these scenarios in your head, none of them good. Christmas 2024, that was something else. It felt less like a celebration and more like a carefully orchestrated performance for our families. We put on brave faces, fake smiles, we exchanged gifts, went through the motions. But every interaction felt hollow, every word forced. I remember looking at her across the dinner table, surrounded by our loved ones, and seeing a stranger. A beautiful stranger, but a stranger nonetheless. The warmth that usually filled our home during the holidays was replaced by a palpable tension. Everyone could feel it, even if no one said anything. Later that night, after everyone had left, I tried to talk again. Imojen, this isn't working. We can't keep living like this. She just nodded, tiredly. I know, Bert. I don't know what to do. No emotion, no tears. Just resignation. It was the first time she hadn't gotten defensive, and in a way, that was even more chilling. It meant she had already checked out, mentally and emotionally. We slept in separate rooms that night. Christmas night. The silent weight of that decision was heavier than any argument we could have had. New Year's Eve, 2024. The night it all ended. We had plans to go to a friend's party, but the energy just wasn't there. For either of us, we were sitting on the couch watching some old movie, pretending everything was normal. The clock was ticking closer to midnight, and then she just looked at me. No anger, no sadness. Just a quiet, almost serene look. Bert, she said, I think we need to separate. The words hung in the air, heavy and final. It wasn't a shock, not really. I had known it was coming for a long time, but hearing it out loud, it was still a punch to the gut. I just nodded. I know, I said. I've known for a while, and then, for the first time in months, a tear traced its way down her cheek. It wasn't a sob, just a single tear. And then another, and for a brief moment, I saw a flicker of the Imojen I used to know. The one who wasn't so cold. We talked for a bit, calmly, about logistics. Who would stay where, how we'd tell our families. It was all very civil, almost clinical, as the countdown to midnight began on the TV. She stood up. I think it's for the best, Bert, she said, her voice barely a whisper, and then, as the fireworks started to explode outside, signaling the start of a new year, she walked out, just like that. No last hug, no final kiss. I sat there, alone, listening to the muffled sounds of celebration. My world, our world, had just shattered with the promise of a new beginning. The days and weeks after were a blur, a mix of profound sadness, anger, and an overwhelming sense of loss. Like a limb had been amputated. I won't lie, it was hard, really hard. There were days I couldn't get out of bed, days I just wanted to disappear. But then, slowly, gradually, the fog began to lift. I started rediscovering myself. The Bert who wasn't defined by his relationship with Imojen. I reconnected with friends I'd neglected. I picked up old hobbies, I started going to the gym, focusing on my physical and mental health. I went to therapy, and that was crucial. Having someone impartial to talk to help me process everything, to understand my own role in the breakdown. Because it's never just one person's fault, is it? I realized I had stopped trying to understand her, stopped communicating effectively myself. I also learned a lot about attachment styles, and how sometimes two people, despite loving each other, just aren't compatible in how they deal with conflict and intimacy. It's been a journey, a painful one, but a necessary one, and I'm still on it. Healing isn't a destination, it's a continuous process. So, what did I learn from all of this? What do I wish I knew back then? A lot. Too much to fit into a 15-second segment, but I'll try. First, communication is everything. Not just talking, but truly listening. And being brave enough to have the uncomfortable conversations. Second, pay attention to the small changes. Those little pebbles I talked about. They're warning signs. Don't ignore your gut. Third, your self-worth isn't tied to someone else's affection. When someone pulls away, it doesn't mean you're not enough. It means they're struggling, or that the dynamic isn't right. Fourth, don't be afraid to ask for help. From friends, family, or professionals. You don't have to go through it alone. And finally, sometimes things just don't work out, and that's okay. Not every story has a happy ending, but every ending is a new beginning. It's now over 6 months since New Year's Eve, and while it still stings sometimes, I'm not heartbroken anymore. I'm hopeful. I'm focusing on building a life that makes me happy, regardless of who else is in it. A life filled with genuine connection, healthy boundaries, and self-love. I don't know what the future holds. Maybe I'll find love again, maybe I won't, but I do know that I'm stronger, wiser, and more resilient than I ever thought possible. If you're going through something similar, know that you're not alone. It gets better, it really does. Just keep going, one day at a time, and remember, every ending is just a new chapter waiting to be written. What will your next chapter be? Thanks for listening to my story. I hope it helps someone out there. Take care of yourselves.